Hey, and welcome to episode 5 of Thanks Universe. Last week I promised you some strategy lessons, so let's jump into it. So, last week I took an hour to myself at a coffee shop to review all that we had accomplished and made sure we were on track. Honestly, I was getting a little freaked out because I was looking at our scorecard and we were just knocking things out. And I was like, wow, at the quarterly meeting, I thought I had over asked from my team and was afraid what they were going to say. And then here we are 4 weeks into the quarter, not even at the halfway point, and we've knocked out more than half of it. So, what's going on? So, I like freaked myself out. So, I took myself to a coffee shop and just did a 1 hour strategy session with myself. So, what I did is I reviewed all we had accomplished and made sure we were on track for where we wanted to go. I didn't want to lose the momentum on all the goals we were hitting. So I did review the company goals and where we were trying to go. And I realized that there was a little bit of a lack of clarity in a few areas. So a lot of the goals we had been hitting, there was some solid, clear clarity there. And a lot of it I was actually driving. And there were a couple areas where there could really be a little bit more clarity, and that clarity would allow my team to drive the rest. So, what I did is for the sales team, I laid out the revenue milestones. Um, for the product development team, I laid out the strategy and a brain dump of the backlog, and I set up a meeting to discuss how we're going to prioritize the backlog and how we're going to pick one thing that we're going to execute on. I'll go into that a little bit later into the episode. That one's a pretty strong point. And then I put an implementation strategy in progress as well. And when I say implementation here, I mean like service and like implementing the things that we sell, not like implementing the strategy, but actually executing the projects we sell to people. So this really helped provide me clarity and allowed me to like clarify things for my team. So it was a really good, productive session at the coffee shop. But one of my favorite things that happened last week was my semi-quarterly meeting with my business accountability besties. And I love my time with my two business besties. So in prep, I wanted to be prepared to meet them and like know what I'm saying. So I spent almost 90 minutes reviewing my goals from the beginning of the quarter, the progress I had made, and if I was still on track, and if I wasn't, where was I stuck? So we do this thing called rosebud thorn seed. So a rose is any wins you've had. A bud is any wins in progress, so things you're working on right now. A thorn is a challenge or somewhere you feel stuck. It could be tactical or it could be mental. It's whatever is going on in our world at that time. And the seeds. So what are the next actions we're going to take before we see each other again? So instead of sharing all of like the rosebud thorn seed with you guys. Just let me know if that's something you want to hear, and I'll add it in next time. I just don't know if that's something you care about. And I really want to make this applicable for you. So I would rather you think about what are your wins? What are your wins in progress? Where are you stuck? And what are the next actions that will push you towards where you want to go? You know? And finally, we discussed new opportunities, we shared resources, both things that we built ourselves, and podcasts and books we were learning from. So that was a little bit of my lessons learned from strategy from last week. And now let's jump into this week. So, a couple things. This week, in terms of training, I attempted to do a live training with my sales rep, and I made a mistake. I got like too into the weeds on the why behind the how to do things before I taught her how to do the things. So I realized I needed to explain the basics first and create a more structured training system. And before I could even make a more structured training system, I needed to create a foolproof way of systematizing how we speak to clients and how we make quotes and make it so simple that anyone could do it, even if they don't understand the why or the math behind what they're selling or making a quote for. Now, that being said, it's very, very important to me that the people on my team understand the product intimately. So this is just a for the first 6 weeks while you're learning type of why I'm making it easier and how to make it faster in the long run. But ultimately, I would want all of my salespeople and my quote team to very intimately understand the product and all be able to do consulting on it if they needed to. Not that would be a part of their everyday job, but the more you understand the product we're selling, the impact it has, the benefits, the different tweaks we can make, the more you're going to be able to be good at your job no matter where you are on the team. Speaking of being good at your job, implementation. I finally got to spend some more time on implementation this week. I got some time to talk to more contractors and subcontractors, started doing things like requesting more information about pictures and sites that I can visit and to see the work that they've done. Because I definitely need to start spending more time on building out our subcontractor skill matrix. So I'm happy that I'm enough is being pulled off my plate by our new sales rep and by our team that I'm able to start spending more time on this, especially since we have an implementation coming up in like a week or two. So, next, I mentioned I would like dive a little deeper into this, but product development. So I got to spend more time on product development this week as well. I spoke to my development manager about how we're going to make decisions about priorities, and I shared a story with him about how I pushed our company forward by spending 80 hours of my time in the last 2 to 3 weeks on implementing a new software system for our company. So essentially, I spent 80 hours making one 4 minute to 5 minute video. And what I did in those 80 hours is took the business system that we have, put it into a software system. Then I configured the software system to make it super easy and simple to understand for our sales reps and our quote makers to make a quote within 5 to 15 minutes. 5 minutes if you're an expert, 15 minutes if you're a bit slow. Our previous time was close to 120 minutes per quote. Instead of 4 quotes a day, we can do over 20. So that increased our capacity significantly. And it also decreased me being the bottleneck because for every question, there would be like, hey, can you check the quote that I made? And then if it was wrong, I would have to correct it. And the only way I could figure out if it was wrong is to do the math from scratch myself. So it was me doing the quotes all over again from beginning to end to double check their work. And if it was wrong, it was harder to fix their work than to just do it myself. So I had spent the last 3 months as the bottleneck because I was making and fixing all the quotes. And that really hindered our sales process because sales is all about time to customer demand, right? Like you want to get back to them as quickly as possible. So by spending these 80 hours outside of typical working hours, putting that system in place, I pushed a company significantly forward because now all I have to do is spend like another 80 hours creating a training manual, but like training our sales reps to make the quotes the same way that I can do in the next 5 to 15 minutes, right? So there's still more work that goes into it, but this is all the back end work that's going to create something that's long lasting. Now, in the meantime, you definitely can't just stop working and spend all of your time on this, right? So I, as the owner, can spend, 5 to 8 hours during quote unquote working hours being reactive, like taking sales calls, talking to my team, giving them the feedback they need, and just like making the process go really fast. But outside of that time, whether it be my mornings or my evenings, that's where I get the extra like 4 to 8 hours to apply to special projects like this. Now, I can't expect that of my team, right? It's not fair. So, I know that we have some product development projects coming up. And if I am able to make such impacts by focusing on one thing, what can my team do? Not gonna lie, I saw Alex Hormozy clip, so I stole a little bit of this from him. But I spent my time working on that one thing. What if I talked to my development manager and we were like, okay, 80% of your time at work is going to spend on this one thing. You're building this one thing, you're doing this one thing, that's it. 20% of your time is communicating with the team saying, hey, these are my working hours this week. These are the hours that are blocked off for focusing on this one time. These are my office hours this week. If you need to communicate about anything, if you need anything done, if you need any information, like these are the hours that I will be responsive to you. Outside of that, just assume that I'm doing the next most important thing that will bring in the most revenue for our company. All right, so we're gonna have a meeting about that next week to look at the strategy and look at the backlog, figure out what's that one thing that's gonna make our company the most money, and then we're gonna test giving 80% of his working time on that one thing and only 20% to communicate with us to let us know when he's working and what the progress is, and if there's any other small things that we need to communicate with him about in the interim. So I'm excited to see how that test goes, and I'm excited for that conversation next week. Um, so I will keep you posted on what happens with that. I have a few other things that happened this week, but what I would like to just go into is I was working this Sunday, this weekend, at a coffee shop, and I got a random call from a previous student of mine. I used to teach religious education classes. God, how long ago was it now? Can't even remember. Probably a decade ago. Maybe a little bit less. Hopefully, it's only been like 5 to 7 years, but I don't remember, to be honest. But one of my previous students gave me a call, and to my pleasant surprise, they started just chatting business. So I spent about 90 minutes mentoring them and chatting business. And one of the things that we discussed, I'd like to share with you. Because I don't know where you are at in your life. I don't know if you already have a significant other or someone who is there to support you in your life, but I was totally nosy, and I mentioned to make sure that he finds a life partner who understands and supports his business ventures because that has been something that has really helped me. And I did not realize how much because my personal and professional growth has exponentially increased. And I would like to say I think I see the same in my husband as well. So just having that person who understands when you're working for like 4 to 8 hours on a weekend instead of, hanging out with them and understands that sometimes, you have to reschedule date night in order to get something urgent done. So that type of support and understanding to just look for that in a partner. And he actually went up to me. He mentioned that he agrees and that for him, finding the right partner is important. And he's actually looking for a woman who's smarter than him. He said he has great street smarts, but he wants someone more educated. And because, and I quote, I know the game, but she knows the rules. And this is in reference to him knowing how to make money and her knowing how to make the money make money. Funny enough, I was just telling my husband, who is making more money than me right now, that I want to educate myself further on wealth management and preservation and how money works in general because he's bringing in more than I know what we can do with, which is a good problem to have. And I want to be able to provide him with options and knowledge on what we can do that aligns with our goals. So I thought this was a really inspirational end to my week, and I wanted to share that with you guys. So thanks, universe, and I hope to see you next week at the end of week 6, which is halfway through our quarter. Until then.